you can create the kind of relationships that you want to have if you don't avoid those hard conversations, if you face the fear of having hard conversations, and you begin to cultivate the kind of client base who will engage with you, who really understands your value and values your value, like really wants to invest in someone like you who is making an impact for them. Hey, it's Samantha Hartley of the Profitable Joyful Consulting Podcast. This season, we have been talking about money. And today I wanted to talk about raising your rates, but not just raising them in any possible way, but specifically on current or existing clients. It's much easier to have a brand new client come in and say a rate to them and them not have a basis for comparison and them say yes to that. But what is definitely a challenge is to raise your rates on existing clients, those who've been working with you for a while. And as you know, the way that I teach my clients to work specifically is with legacy clients. We want to do these long-term engagements. And so you may have clients that you'll work with, as I have, for 5, 6, 10 years at a time. And over that time, you're going to need to raise your rates commensurate with the value that you're bringing. So your rates are going to increase along with the value that you bring, rather than it being what people expect to be the opposite, which is, over time they get the value from you and then you kind of taper off. If you're tapering off the work, that may be fine. But if you're continuing to work with your clients and you're bringing new benefits, then you're going to need to raise your rates on them. And that can be a delicate conversation that I want to talk about how to do today. Before I do, in the past, I have talked about how to price your services. There is a specific episode on that, and I will link to that in the show notes. And in the case that that doesn't answer all of your questions about pricing, or if you'd like to know more about this topic, please reach out and leave a comment on the socials with your specific questions, and I'll make a future episode for you about this. I'm always paying attention to what questions people have, and I would love for us to work together at some point. But in case we don't, I do want you to get the answers to what your questions are so that you can be profitable and joyful just from listening to this podcast. So let's talk about raising rates on existing clients. You've been working with somebody, let's say it's been for a year, and now you feel like it's time to do more, give them more benefits and offer a different rate for what you're doing. So how do we get into that conversation? As I said, when a lot of times my clients are working on year-long transformational engagements, and one of the things that we will bring up when we sign this agreement is the reason we make a year-long agreement is that you want to lock in that rate, and they want to lock in your availability to work with them for this amount of time. So we're making a promise about certain results, and we're doing that in exchange for a certain price for those services. Now, that doesn't mean that in year 2, that price is going to be the same necessarily. So if you have found that you go into year 2 and now there's a new dimension to the work, then you may want to raise the rates on them. And so ideally, you would have discussed that in the agreement, as I do. So my clients know that we're going to do this. It's a certain scope. If the scope changes, we're going to change the price. And going forward, once this engagement has ended, then we'll discuss how we're going to work together and at what rate. Okay, so that is conceptually something that's already on the table. And I want you to have thoroughly discussed price for these reasons. We never want to avoid this topic. And so I'm talking about this today because this is a topic that we avoid. 5 things to consider when you are raising your rates. The first one is facing the fear. So the big fear that my clients will bring to me when they are concerned about raising their rates is that the client will just walk. The second worst fear, the second worst thing that could happen is that they would say something like, well, you're not worth that, or they would just get a negative or angry response from their clients. In most cases, that doesn't happen. And if it does, it's really about the client themselves processing their reaction to this, because they're going to be, understandably, they can be upset. It's going to be often a surprise to them. Sometimes they already suspect that it's about to happen. But just give them time to process their feelings. They might just want to have a conversation with you about what's happening. It doesn't mean that they're pushing back on the decision to raise rates on them, but a lot of times they just want to process what you have said to them and have a reaction to it. That reaction is not about you. Okay, that's within themselves. They are processing how much this is. They're thinking about their business or their organization and how they feel about it. It's going to trigger their money ideas and beliefs, and that doesn't have something to do with you. Okay. So facing the fear of a difficult conversation is an important part of raising your rates. I've seen people avoid doing this for years and get underpaid specifically because they didn't ever really find the courage to go and have a courageous conversation with clients. Okay. So the second thing that we want to think about before you go in and raise your rates is what are the reasons that you're doing this? So why are you doing it and why now? And getting really clear on that. For a lot of my clients, the reason that they're doing this now is because they're super fed up. Right? They felt for a long time that what they're being paid is not commensurate with the value that they're bringing, and that is frustrating. And so don't take that frustration into the meeting. Let that frustration fuel the courage, but don't let it come into the meeting. Okay? So, I find that people get frustrated when they have started to feel a deficit. So a thing I want us to be careful about whenever we talk about price is that we're not talking about your price. Like, you are priceless, or your worth. The worth you have, like, you are a gift from the universe to all of us here on earth. So you're priceless, and there is not a number that we would put on you, but your services and the impact that you have on your clients, we can put numbers on those things. So be very careful about not receiving somebody saying something like, well, you're not worth that. That means the services aren't worth that. Their experience that they're having of the work is not worth that, according to them. And you may decide, okay, that's fine. Then it's not a fit. So get really clear on the benefits that you are bringing to your clients. So why are you increasing the cost? Maybe it's like you feel like something's out of whack and you're not being paid commensurate with the value. It can be that your costs have gone up. I don't love to make that the client's problem. I really would prefer that you frame that more in terms of the benefits that we are bringing to you are more. What are the benefits that you bring to your clients? What's the value you bring to your clients? Well, what can they be, do, or have now that they couldn't before they started working with you? And has that made them money, saved them time, helped them retain employees, created a better work environment that increased morale, improved the reputation of their organization, and in the eyes of the public? So there's a lot of benefits that working with you can bring to them, and a lot of times it's going to be capabilities and capacity that they didn't have before. So what are the skills they now have that they're going to have forever, that they can now apply in all areas of their lives? What are the other impacts that you've made? So I want you to list those and really create a cogent argument for why you're doing this and the reason you're doing it now. So a lot of times it's best to do this at a milestone, about like you're about to sign up for a new series of a new part of the work. It can be at the new year or a fiscal year change. It can be a new phase in the work that you're doing. A new proposal comes along, something like that. So just think about timing things in a way that feels kind of organic and not out of nowhere. For yourself, I want you to do it as early as possible in that frustration feeling so that you don't get angry and take the frustration into the client. So when you start to feel like things are out of whack price-wise and you don't feel like you're being compensated fairly, then that's the time to begin planning to have this conversation. So that's the next piece, is let's have the conversation. How do you communicate this to your clients? So I've worked very carefully and with great intention with my clients on these conversations in the past, really getting the charge out of it. So you need to practice it, say it a lot of times so you don't sound angry or defensive or nervous and all of the things that we feel when we're having to speak up for our value, because that's what's happening here. If you put yourself in the client's shoes, what you're really doing is delivering bad news, right? Nobody's going to be excited about a price increase, even if they do truly believe that you deserve it. Still, it's not going to be a great thing for them. So what we're going to do here is we're going to bookend bad news, right? Bookend the bad news. It's like the compliment sandwich, something bad and something good, and then the thing they need to work on, and then something good. So when you bookend the bad news, what you're going to do is start with celebrating the work that you have done so far. What are the wins you've had? What's the contributions that you have made to them? What are the things that you are both very excited about that they can undeniably say, yes, that was valuable? So point to the value you've already brought them and celebrate the ways in which they are doing amazing things as a result. What are their wins that have happened as a result of the work together? So that first piece of the bad news, the first book in the book ending, is the great things that they've done. The middle is the price increase. Here, you're going to just go through exactly what we covered and why we're having this conversation, why you are raising the prices, how you feel that the value is increasing, and you are going to be doing that value for them, what they have experienced so far, and why you're increasing the price. So again, you can talk about costs, but I would much prefer that you say, I've had other experiences now with other clients over the course of the year that I'm bringing in that work. You have seen in the beginning, it was a risk to work with me maybe, but you have now seen the value of the work. I'm going to be continuing to bring this value to you. And in the other bookend, here are the things I'm excited about doing in the coming time period, year, next few years, next quarter. Here are the things I'm excited about bringing to you that are additional perceived value for the client. Okay, so the bookend is the wins we've had so far, the bad news of like we're raising the price and why, and then the benefits to them, the exciting new things to come, the ways in which you're going to continue to deliver value to them. Okay, so that's a great way to deliver this kind of news. Had a client recently do this, also went in super nervous about hearing a no, presented the situation, did include a little bit of the cost. She hadn't raised her prices in 3 years that she'd been working with her clients. The benefit to them was all of this experience that she has gathered and the ways that she's going to be able to add value to their businesses. And then new ideas, new offers, new ways of working so that they would be excited too. And presenting your success creates a little sense of scarcity. It's like, I have other clients and we're doing these other great things, and I'm collecting information and collecting wisdom and experience and expertise that I can bring from my work with others into our work. And that's actually a benefit to them. So it's not that you're so exclusive, it's that you bring this community knowledge that you can also apply to their organization as well. So that is a valuable benefit to them. And my client successfully raised prices on her existing clients. Did lose one. Guess what? That's number 4. You might need to be prepared to negotiate. And we always need to be willing to lose a client who decides that it is no longer valuable to them, or it wouldn't be valuable to them at that price. This is why you need to be really sure that you are fed up with the way things are now, or that you're no longer willing to work for that price. This is really key because, in a negotiation, if you're not willing to walk away, then you're going to end up compromising or agreeing to something that is going to make future you very unhappy with that decision. So you have to negotiate from a place of, I'm willing to let this go if I need to. So if they do decide to negotiate, well, what if we didn't do this? Would you be willing to do that? So be prepared for that kind of a conversation, because a lot of times savvy organization leaders will negotiate with you. They will push back on some things so you can be willing to say, no, this is actually the final thing here. Or if they're like, well, what if we didn't do this? Or what if we did do that? Then you can negotiate those things. So be willing to negotiate. It isn't a my way or the highway, usually conversation in business. And in any negotiation, you do have to be willing to walk away if the terms are not right for you and you aren't willing to do things for a different price. Okay. Last thing. Long-term relationships. We thrive in our business with long-term relationships, and I want you to create these. One of my favorite things about the relationships that I have with my clients, and the fact that they're long-term, and the fact that we had difficult conversations in the very beginning about pricing. I said things like, this is the rate, this is the investment that we're going to make. If the scope changes, then things will be different. The scope did change, and I would bring it up and we would have conversations about it. So we've had the long-term difficult conversations so that now I can say things like, well, actually, if we do this, I'm going to incur additional costs, or I have a new IP that I'm going to share with you. And so we're going to increase the rate accordingly, or we're expanding our services. Would you like to partake of more services? Or here are the new benefits that are available to you. Would you like to have these? And that my clients know, yes, that's I'm going to step up to a new investment level to do that. You can create the kind of relationships that you want to have if you don't avoid those hard conversations, if you face the fear of having hard conversations, and you begin to cultivate the kind of client base who will engage with you, who really understands your value and values your value, like really wants to invest in someone like you who is making an impact for them. That's what I wanted to share with you today about how to raise your rates on existing clients. Don't fear something like this, and don't by any means let yourself continue to work, over give, and get yourself to the point where you're in a deficit and you're feeling, um, I said scandalized and outraged, but it really is like it feels like a wound or an injury that you're incurring from people around you. What is really helpful for me when I work with my clients on this is that I'll say to them, you have to be sure about this. I can't go in there and have this conversation with you. You have to have this conversation. And when you do, you have to be so confident, so adamant that this is the fair rate. This is the fair price for what you're offering. And when you do, like when you stand in that confidence and that conviction, 9 times out of 10, your client says yes, because you've really, really owned that value. When I see my clients do that, that's when they get huge bumps in their business, and really you become unstoppable. So my wish for you is that you will stand in that value that you're bringing your clients, that if you feel that anywhere in your business, things are not aligned with the value that you're delivering, where you're not being paid, what is the right investment level for what you're doing, then I hope you'll have a conversation like this one. And I hope that what we talked about today will make that conversation easier for you. And with that, I am wishing you a profitable and joyful consulting business.